So real quick, boys, we're live. Tell me what is going on, Jay, with why the markets are in the dumps for non-crypto reasons. And actually, Austin, you had a post on this too,
Oh my
so I'm sure you
God.
have something to say about what was the face on your thumbnail?
Gary
Gensler.
Gensler.
But Jay, what do you got? What is affecting the markets, sir?
Well, I mean, there was that one American general, I think, or pretty high up in the army, came out and said that we might be at war with China in 2 years, and then right after that, we started shooting down their balloons. So I mean, it
I
feels like.
miss. I miss.
Did you
Is this
miss
the
that?
same guy who was like, "We have also started a misinformation campaign"? Did you hear that general say that? In the US, he's like, we've also been, it was like, we started a troll farm. That's what it was. We started a troll, like, I think it's like a Twitter troll farm. And he just came out and said it. And I was like, what are you talking about? So
It
who
might
is
have been the
joining?
same. Yeah, it might be the same because the way that he said like, if he estimated we'd probably be at war with China by 2025, it was just sort of like so out of the blues. It's the kind of thing that you didn't expect them to say out loud,
Yeah.
that he may have been saying a bunch of other stuff. I sort of wondered, like, I wonder if that guy is still employed after.
So wait. So you think that, like, you mentioned the balloons, you mentioned these shit talking generals. Is this what really pulled us into a bear bump, or what? You actually think this is what affected the market?
I think it's part of it. But go for it, Austin. Or
I
don't know
don't think so. I think there's other economic factors that are actually playing a much bigger role, but go ahead, Jay.
Yes. Okay. All right. Let me break down what's going on, ladies and gentlemen. We have conspiracy in the right corner, and we have whatever Austin is in the
Pure
left
economic
corner.
data.
Yeah, basically like Bloomberg in the left corner. No, but I wanted to say, Jay, if you could talk about other things that you think are affecting the market. And when you say the market, I'm assuming financial markets, the economy. Obviously, this is not Crypto Bros, so we are talking a little bit about the crypto market.
Yeah.
I would be interested to hear some of that because I did listen to Austin's with us today. He runs a channel on YouTube everyone should check out called Decentralized News, and it's like 35 minutes. And if you just listen to that, you don't even need to check news for at least a week in crypto, which is actually a very impressive thing because, as you know, if you're in crypto, every 5 seconds there's new news. Yeah. But Jay, I would love to hear narratives actually outside of that, because I do think the tensions between China, the US, and Russia, I don't know where those tensions are, but whenever there's tensions between those countries, it does affect the overall macro outlook. So and if actually, before we get into our topics today, which are looking at the Syria and Turkey earthquake and basically how Web3 and crypto showed up, that's one of them. And then looking at Ordinals, because for me, as someone who is more and more Bitcoin maxi every day, as one does, that's really exciting. And I got 2 out of 3 head shakes. That's all I wanted. So anyways, but before we get into those 2 topics, I would actually like to hear both of you kind of touch on things that you think are affecting the market, because the little Bitcoin in me is just like, we just need to wait for the halving. So other than that.
Well, yeah. And to do this in an organized way, Jay, go down kind of your punch list of like the top 3 to 5 bullets that you see as signs that are really affecting. And then we'll jump to Austin, and Austin, you can drop some of your economic data on us. So what do you got, Jay?
Well, I think first thing that lets me realize that, something is definitely happening is we got really good Fed data. Everyone was really happy after the last Fed meeting. Sure, interest rates are still going up, but we're confident that maybe it's only a couple more this year, and then it's going to level out. But in spite of that, you still see this volatility in the market. Like we were talking about, the market looks like it's coming back today. I think a lot of that is just based on what's been happening outside of the Fed conversations.
Interesting.
And so that's, what we see happening with natural disasters, like we were talking about Pakistan and Turkey and Syria. Turkey, by the way, has had a tough time. The last couple months, it feels like there's a lot of stuff that's happening there.
I was going to say, they're having a tough time, Jay. But yes, you're okay. Outside of the earthquake, there's a
Yeah.
lot going on. Okay, got it.
And then I think when you think of that whole China, Russia, whether or not they're together and conspiring against the West, late last year, or maybe in the middle of last year, there was that, them coming together to form their own currency that should rival the petrodollar. And then after that, China releases its people. That's the wrong word. They end their
Was it
lockdown.
like back in Egypt and he was like, "Let my people go," Jay?
That's not what happened. President Xi apologized.
President Xi, I apologize.
And
Well, Jay, I want to
he's
say if
listening.
President Xi is ever watching Not Crypto Bros, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing because maybe we're just state-run media over there.
Oh, wow.
He's literally watching to go, are we gonna allow this episode of Not Crypto Bros out? Nope, not this one.
Yeah, they're gonna AI over all of our voices and mouths, and we're just gonna be like, "China is the greatest. China's the greatest. China's the greatest."
It's gonna translate.
But yeah, China was coming back. They're
Okay.
opening up their country again, and then bam, then we get this rogue general that comes through and say, hey, we're going to be at war with them in 2 years. Like a week after that, then we start shooting down their balloons. Like it almost feels to me like it's this manufactured match towards just towards us doing something that people aren't necessarily expecting. Do you know what I mean? Maybe very similar to the way that people talk about the World War I and what was the name of that ship? The Lithuania. I'm saying the name wrong, but
Lusitania.
yeah, there we go. That's it. The ship, the cruise ship that
The
had-
cruise,
Titanic.
It
was like a
I know
cruise-
it was. I
cruise
know. I'm
ship,
just
right?
giving Jay stick.
It was in the Atlantic, and it ended up getting
Lusitania.
bombed because the German U-boats and everything were all out there. But they were told from beforehand that you shouldn't get on this ship. This ship shouldn't be traveling this particular route. They did anyway. They got bombed. They ended up bringing the U.S. into the war. I feel like it's the same kind of manufactured tragedy, right, in terms of what's happening with China. And that's, of course, the conspiracy, because I don't have any proof of any of that.
I just picture Xi over there just coming up with balloons. Like, who's
Just blowing
manufacturing
the balloons?
Yeah, like who is manufacturing? Like, let me ask you this: what would a motivation be to manufacture a war?
I think it's the economy, right? Like war is what brings economies back, right? Like when stuff goes bad, you need everyone to sort of get together and be on the side of the public good. We're all building together. We all have the same enemy. It's not, feminists versus Andrew Tate. It's not, Republicans versus liberals. All that stuff sort of goes out of the window. And then you've got this massive amount of spending that gets flooded into the economy. That's really how you bring economy.
Yeah, the war machine, wartime markets. Okay, but you are bridging into Austin's topic, which was economics. And so there was definitely media. Were there any other high level bullets that we cover before we jump over to some of Austin's indicators?
Not that I can think of, but if I do think of anything, I'll chop in with it.
Definitely. So Austin, I mean, there's these socioeconomic factors going on, but you think something else is happening. Talk to us. What is driving the market down a little bit? There's some downward pressure. Today might be different. We'll see. But what drove last week's tanking and what's going on now?
Last week's tanking, the last 2 weeks tanking has been driven by the SEC, by regulation, and by moves by Gary Gensler. Gary Gensler has kind of taken he's been anti-crypto, but he's kind of been sitting on the side, been kept quiet for the last while. And then for the last 2 weeks, every Sunday, he loves to just wreak havoc on the market. There, 2 weeks ago, he's like, no more staking on centralized exchanges. You banned in the US with that fine on Kraken, pulling it. It had been kind of one of several. They'd already cracked down on Gemini, but Gemini's going through bankruptcy issues, so it doesn't really matter. But they went and hit Kraken, and so market kind of reacted poorly to that. And then we have this whole USDC, Paxos, stablecoins are now are securities now. So that really kind of disturbed the market. And then today we've seen a little bit of the action from CPI. So CPI has was above expectation. So inflation was still running hot, but it's still down from last month. So it caused a very sudden, very quick move down. But then when everyone realized, oh wait, inflation still went down this month over month, the market has now kind of rallied and come back from that.
Interesting. Now, did Gensler actually, and this is to anybody, did Gensler actually say no staking on any centralized exchanges, or are we just extrapolating that because of Kraken?
It's unclear. There's some statements that he made that make it sound like it's all centralized exchange staking, but because it's already not allowed on Binance.us.
Yes.
It's Gemini got fined for it. Kraken's got fined for it. The only other really big one in the US that's left is Coinbase, and I don't use Coinbase, so I don't even know if they allow staking. One-sided
What do you do
staking.
for your onboarding if not Coinbase?
Binance. I got Binance Global. It's easier to use here in Canada than it is Coinbase.
Do you use a VPN? Because I'm not allowed to use Binance Global.
I'm in Canada, so I can get away with it. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Jarrett, what do you use for onboarding?
Stateside, so I use Binance.us and I use Coinbase and I use Swan to get my Bitcoin. Shout out Swan Bitcoin.
I'll have to. Swan. That is the IRA, right? Or no?
No,
it's not a fund. It's not a mutual fund. It's just an exchange.
Just an exchange. I mean, the only thing you can get there is Bitcoin.
And then George Pate says, SafePal wallet, bro. And then he asks this question, who wants to tackle this? How do you decentralize an exchange other than doing peer-to-peer?
So you can onboard through like MoonPay and different things into MetaMask and peer-to-peer. So there's things like ShakePay in Canada and yeah, it's a weird one.
How do you spell that? Is it like SHAKE?
Yeah,
okay.
like
I didn't know if it was like SHEIKH. I was like, oh, Canada, okay.
No. So
there's like a shaking mechanism with the app. I forget what it is, but if you shake the app, something happens.
Stop that.
No, 100%.
No. It's actually he's serious. If you shake your phone like every day, you get a little bit of
it puts it into a crypto blender so no one really knows whose money is what.
Yeah. I was like, I thought we already talked about Tornado Cash, but apparently Canada just calls it Shake Blender and everyone's getting more Bitcoin or whatever.
George, on this question, do you recommend ATM? Are you talking about like a Bitcoin ATM? We'd love to hear more, unpack that question a little bit more.
If it's I don't like Bitcoin ATMs. The fees are incredibly high. You're better off using something like MoonPay, which can basically allow you to buy USDT or other cryptos right into your MetaMask, or I think even Trust Wallet now. And keep your eye out because Visa and MasterCard are unrolling things with PayPal, although the SEC might have just changed that to allow easier onboarding of fiat into decentralized wallets rather than through exchange wallets. So keep your eye out on that.
So, okay, so these are the market things, and I don't know, Jay, I don't know if you spoke to why you think the market's bouncing back. Austin mentioned possibly because we're seeing better, inflation numbers and better CPI numbers. So the market's kind of feeling a little bit strong. Jarrett, any input there? Like, why do you think the market's looking strong?
I mean, I don't think it's looking strong. I just think it's looking like where it was. It hasn't, like, nothing's really happened. It like went up to almost 25,000 and now it's back down to 22. I'm just only going to talk also about crypto vis-a-vis the Bitcoin price because I think that that's like a really good indicator.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's still at 22,000. which is really where it was almost 2 weeks ago, Grant, when you and I did the episode of like, is it going to 15 or 25? It's funny when it's at like 22,300, everyone's like, it's a strong market. When it's at 21,700, everyone's freaking out. So, Bitcoin can swing.
I mean, when I'm talking about sentiment, I'm talking about trends. I'm not even necessarily talking about price. Like, do you sense there's momentum in it? Or do you think it's just kind of recovering a level?
So I think it's just kind of recovering a level. I always looked at 2023, like 2019, which is going to be a zombie year. It's just kind of going to go sideways, and we're all just going to get super hyped off the telenovela news that is crypto. But like when you really sit back, like if we just stop doing Not Crypto Bros and come back in 3 months, it will be like at 24 or we'll be at 20. And either way, those aren't huge swings. Like they're not, I'm not going to be able to write home about them. So I'm kind of pretty neutral right now about the market. I think that there's going to continue to be regulation and more kind of like government level FUD. We're really seeing that with Gensler and all of the things that happen with Paxos. The way that stable coins are used, and maybe we can try to, all right, bye, George. Thank you so much. The way that we can kind of like around the world, stablecoins are really, really useful for people who are experiencing incredible amounts of like currency devaluation and overall inflation. So to see that the US government come out against that and call them a security, well, you bet your bottom dollar that what they're trying to do is protect the US dollar. They don't want people trading their rupees, pesos, whatever other liras, quetzales. They don't want them trading them to anything else but dollars. They don't want them to go to a thing from a private company like Circle. So I think that to me, and then maybe we can start to come into the Syria and the Turkey and crypto, because stablecoins play such an important role of supporting people with cross-border payments because they aren't volatile. So maybe that's where we can go. And then the last thing I kind of want to say is that I took this picture the other day in downtown Bogota. I like dipped in a currency place, or it was like a money place. And it's just it's a Bitcoin ATM. And I'm going to go by and ask them how, hey, of 100 people, how many people use this thing? I'm sure the things get dust on it. But like to totally kind of echo what Austin said, Bitcoin ATMs are really cool because you can totally keep your anonymity if you just have like a hot wallet on your phone or whatever, but you are going to pay 20 to 25% for that anonymity. However, I will say I foresee a big future in the US where, and this is something I actually want to do, and maybe we'll just do it all the four of us, but I want to put Bitcoin ATMs in casinos. Because that way, when I get my cash from all my sports betting, because I've never lost with soccer, knock on wood, I can just take my thousands and then just put it right into sats and then put it on my phone. Yeah, I'll pay 20%, but no one needs to know that those are my sats. You know what I'm saying? So,
funnily enough, my co-host does that, works at a pizza place. And that's what he does with his tips. All of his tips in cash. There's a Bitcoin ATM across from his place. And he buys with all of his tips. He buys Bitcoin. That's all he does.
And they don't report his tips?
They don't report his tips. He doesn't have to report his tips. It's all cash.
Tips aren't reported if they're in cash.
And gambling earnings aren't reported?
If they're under a certain amount, you don't have to. It's in cash. I mean, that's why casinos, and everyone's like, oh, crypto's where all the money laundering happens. I'm like, no, casinos have always been this. You can come in and then you don't even have to do anything. You just put it into chips. You could sit at the bar and then cash out, and it's different money. I mean, it is the original tornado cash. I don't know about the Shake Shack you guys got up in Canada, but
the Shake Shack.
I'm going to read out Brian's question here, and then I'll pass the mic. It says, do people agree with Nick Carter that the U.S. government is engaged in a coordinated effort to unbank crypto, including efforts to shut off crypto exchanges from the formal banking sector /on-ramp /off-ramp? I love this. Whoever wants to take this.
This was literally what I wanted to talk with you guys about on our show tomorrow about CBDCs, because this is exactly what I think is going on with the SEC. And
unbank crypto. Well, I mean, so Jarrett said something earlier that I have to agree with, and that is all efforts are being made to protect the US dollar. And good afternoon, Victor. He's our guy.
Victor is here.
Victor has arrived. Tell us where Shido's at, brother. He's going to. He's going.
You know
to.
he's going to give it. He's going to show it. He's just going to put a picture of his Lambo in the comments.
Yeah, I'm good, guys. Summary. I think yes. I think that there is a concerted effort. By who exactly? And does everyone know? Is it a coordinated effort? I think some elements are a coordinated effort, but I think everyone is being greedy, right? Like we know that, like, to me, being greedy is not a dig. It's a human trait. Everyone's protecting how they make money. And who is your new guest, Allison? Who is your new guest? Allison, if you don't know Aussie from Decentralized News, you have to. He's our guest here. He's been a guest on the show before, but he also has a show on YouTube called Decentralized News. You got to check out. They do a lot of good stuff. But Victor's bringing you something new.
Not ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, I've actually been talking about Blur. I've seen Blur.
Okay. If Victor and Austin are talking about a coin, enter it with the most caution you could enter.
Take a time out.
It's radioactive. By staying around it, you are being
take a knee. But I would say that our elements of greed are what is creating an unbanking of crypto right now. And I think anyone who's a fan of crypto, you need to make concerted efforts to encourage crypto being integrated into our system. I always point to the ISO 20022 protocols, and that's evidence that they want elements of blockchain, but do they want elements of other cryptocurrencies? And and I've said this for a while, and this is my challenge with being a Bitcoin maxi, to always contrast Jarrett. I don't think I could ever be a Bitcoin maxi, not because of anything inherently in the protocol, but because I know how powerful the forces of greed are. And I mean powerful, not rich. I think with Bitcoin, you could be richer, but money's not the game at a certain point. Power is. And I believe that these lawmakers, not even lawmakers, it's not even the lawmakers, these bankers have a level of power that would drag me into Jay's box of total conspiracy. But I don't even think it's coordinated efforts. I think it's an uncoordinated chess game of power. And where does the power lie? It lies with controlling how crypto is entering the US, and by proxy, the Canadian and North American banking system, and by proxy, the global banking system. So I think that, go ahead, Jarrett, what do you got?
No, I love where you're going, and I want to just throw it right. It's hot. Throw the hot potato to Jay. Jay, this is you. Can you put it back up on the screen too, if people are just checking in the Brian Naughton's comment?
Yeah. And for context, Jay worked in the Central Bank of Caribbean, right?
Mm-hmm. Eastern Caribbean.
So tell us about how the centralized bankers are coordinating a debanking of crypto.
I like the way you put it, that maybe it's not coordinated, but each little group is sort of doing its thing when it's required. Because I think back to last year, I think it was like middle of last year, everyone was sort of excited because the Fed had made this announcement that they were allowing certain crypto banks to like into the fold of the other bigger banks and being able to use their systems. And that seemed pretty cool. And then, a couple months later, you started to slowly see different organizations pulling that back or putting obstacles in place that might prevent large crypto organizations from participating in the ecosystem. And I think the whole thing is very similar to what you saw the big tech companies doing with TikTok. Like, the reason why TikTok probably won't survive in the West is because it doesn't have a seat at the table like a Facebook or a Twitter, right? And in the same way that a lot of the crypto companies that we've come to love probably won't survive because they aren't lobbying politicians like Amazon is.
Yeah.
I'm with you there, Jay. I think there's been a concerted move that I've seen, and I've covered it more and more in the shows that I've done. If you check out our channel, you'll see the theme kind of come up over and over again. There's been more and more adoption by non-crypto financial organizations throughout North America, throughout the UK and Europe as well. I mean, In Brazil, the oldest bank in Brazil has allowed people to pay taxes with crypto, with Bitcoin especially. BNY Mellon in the US has said that crypto is here to stay and that crypto is going to be a big part of the future, with them even allowing certain selected institutional clients to buy Bitcoin and Ethereum through BNY Mellon. So they're pushing people back towards the banks. They want people to use the banks to buy crypto so that the governments don't have to bail out the banks.
Interesting. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, like if you think about government, its public claim is that it's to protect the people. I would generalize that its MO is to protect, and it protect its interests, and then it could fill in the blank of like it could play the fill in the blank game of like what its interests are. And is it in its best interest to unbank crypto? Well, not necessarily. And especially if there is a global move, for example, and this might be a good moment for us to bridge to Syria and Turkey right now, because we're seeing whether it's the Ukraine war or whether it's the new use cases, at some point, the demand from the people for the level of velocity of currency and the liquidity available, and we'll touch on this with what CZ did with Binance, because I really think that's a really cool use case of an actual new use for crypto philanthropy. So I guess, Jarrett, since your hand is in this at Mercy Corps more than anything, let's bridge to, if you guys are cool with it, talk a little bit about, let's go high level, what's going on with Turkey, Syria, and donations. And then maybe we can tie these thoughts or at least learn something about paralleling these two worlds. What do you got?
Yeah, so I think it's actually I'm going to try to make the connection, but we've just been talking about how governments are like trying to keep the individual, trying to keep all of us, trying to keep everyone in the comment section, trying to keep just individuals out of crypto, right? If we think about capitalism, it's to protect, you're saying to protect, it's to protect capital, right?
Air quotes,
in a capitalist society, that's where you have private property, right? That's like at the base of everything. And so as we transition and then we look at a disaster moment where then the world wants to show up, well, let's just think about if this disaster moment, if this earthquake happened in the 80s, this specific earthquake, we would have to be sending stuff through even Mercy Corps, who I work for, but it would probably be coming through like wire transfers, or you'd be mailing a check. And so what you're talking about, granted, the velocity of money and the ability to basically show up as quick as possible. Now we're here at crypto, and we're kind of outside of these government structures. We're even outside of the SWIFT payment system. We're outside of the way the current world is set up to show up for people, because it's like, hey, if Not Crypto Bros wants to raise $10,000 and send it to the endowment ETH, wallet address of Syria or Turkey, we can just do that. We are totally in a permissionless society, and the current structure is set up on permission, right? Whether you're going to go through the bank, or you're going to have to deal with the government, or you're going to have to deal with the SWIFT program, the SWIFT system. So in a permissionless society, we can now do what we want. And I think it's changing the way philanthropy, and it's changing the way people show up in these disaster moments, because we're just able to send so much more economic energy so much quicker. And I think one of the really cool things is, let's just go back to my hypothetical thought experiment, which is like, if this would have happened in the 80s, right? I'm writing a check and then I'm going to send it to Mercy Corps. Mercy Corps is going to
calling Sally Struthers on the phone. Yeah.
Or you even think about, like, I remember when I watched the Freddie Mercury movie, and like Live Aid, and you would call on the phone, and like that's how you do it. It's like, no, now I can just paste the ERC number into my wallet and send $500. And once the transaction and the network transactions have happened on Ethereum, it's there in about 7 minutes. And so I think that's really cool. And one of the things too in emergencies that I'm starting to see that I think is really interesting is that you don't necessarily need infrastructure. As long as everyone can connect to their mobile phones, then everyone can take part in being able to get some value, because maybe we don't have water and we're stranded, but I need to go to the store and buy water, but I have nothing, but I have my mobile phone. As long as it has a charge, and then we get into other things, right? Because then you're dependent on things. Then I can go to the store and CZ, and then maybe Grant, I can pass it back to you. And then I'd love to hear what Austin and Jay think about this. But we're in a whole new world. We're in a whole new framework. And for me, with philanthropy and what we're doing at Mercy Corps, we're really in a moment of looking at this and saying we can't do things the way we used to do, because we now have tools and the
Yeah.
tech to be able to solve things faster.
Yeah.
Don't send me a check when you could just send me Bitcoin on the Lightning Network, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the
Yeah.
moment we're in, and millions have been funneled into both Syria and Turkey, and it's been great to see how the Web3 community is showing up. I think Web3, and anyone listening to this, whether you're a Bitcoin maxi, whether you're into NFTs, you're into DeFi, you're part of a DAO, whatever, however you fall into this ecosystem, the one word that will bring us all together is community.
Yeah.
And so when a disaster happens, community does show up. So I'll pass it to anyone now.
Real quick on this, for those who are popping in later or whatever, maybe look in the show notes. I've dropped a link to the Decrypt article that Jarrett first gave us about this. And this was interesting because, you know, Jarrett, you're saying write a check, call on a phone. Well, technically, if I had a credit card, I could wire money from my phone, whether it was Coinbase and crypto. It might take a little bit to get there on traditional banking, but you're right. It's still relatively low lift for me to donate, even through a credit card. But I think that there are new use cases that matter even more dynamically that it is crypto. We saw in the Ukraine that a lot of a large enough representation of the refugees were using their crypto because it was going across state borders. Anywhere they might be a refugee and going into another country and being a new resident there, or literally like having odd status in that country, but they know that they could get their money instead of, like, imagine going to a new country and setting up banking. We joke with Jay a little bit about his papers. It's just a headache for him to think about getting this paperwork done. But what if he literally, just like maybe we'll get back to BTC Ordinals or NFTs in general, but what if his papers, what if his identity was all an NFT? That's what's going on with the Ukraine refugees. Now what we're seeing in Turkey, a specific use case in crypto philanthropy that blew my mind was there was no like, let me talk to this institution and then let me talk to this institution, and days go by where money ended up in people's hands that could use those resources immediately on the street in Turkey and in Syria. CZ just made a unilateral decision and said, we're airdropping $100, which in Turkish lira do pretty good conversion wise, huge, to all of our users in the region. Just click. It's smart contract. It's done. He didn't have to talk to JP Morgan Bank and then wire the money here and then get a nod from the board. He was able to unilaterally just do that. And that was a nuts use case of, he didn't even wait for me and Sally Struthers to donate, right? Like, he literally just said, I'm doing this because we have the resources. Let's do that. And then on top of that, Jarrett, all of the donations flooding in just through smart contracts. I can do it from here. Like, if I wanted my bank to come up with a fundraising campaign, it might be another week before it goes through legal, and then it gets approved by their marketing board, and then they make sure they check all the boxes to go, okay, how do we make sure we get our back scratched for all this good that we're doing in the world? Instead, like you just posted, Jarrett just posted a link, and I'll post it here in the comments in just a moment, Jarrett, but endowment.org, there's these ad hoc networks of people that boot up instantly. You have a fund. The fund is being handled, hopefully responsibly. People can dump in that afternoon, and now we're making an impact to people that need that money stat. So speed and liquidity sound like, oh, I could just make a credit card payment. I'm telling you, this goes through so much rigmarole before it actually ends up on frontline people's hands. Jay, what's your thought? You're itching to say something there, brother.
Let me give you another perspective. And again, you know, like I'm a die-hard pessimist, right? Like, whenever I hear something, I try to think of, like, what's the scam here? Like, what is this about? So the whole thing about CZ airdropping $100 to all of his clients in Turkey, this is the way I think about it. What if you were in charge of an organization and you wanted to give some money to somebody who was on the blacklist? Like, you weren't allowed to give them that money. And just so happens that they lived in a country that had a massive natural disaster. And you figured out, you know what, if I just gave all the money to the people, there aren't many other places for them to buy supplies other than my rich friend who I originally wanted to give the money to anyway. So if I give the money to the people, won't they just buy supplies from my friend, and vis-a-vis, he gets the money in the end? And I'll tell you,
oh my God,
stuff like that happens all the time. Coming from financial background and working for a central bank and a ministry of finance, there were deals like that happen constantly.
Who's CZ's friend in this example?
I don't know, some Russian oligarch, who's been blacklisted and happens to live in the Ukraine and owns not Ukraine. I'm sorry, who happens to live in Turkey and owns some kind of infrastructure that people need. Maybe they supply gas. Or
you've got a fan in Victor.
Lifting.
If you gave Victor and Jay $1 million in a suitcase, in a weekend it's gone. I'm convinced.
I'm telling you what. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I am a diehard optimist in the inherent good of people. I also believe realistically there is the natural entropy of the human spirit called greed, and I don't think you're wrong. Like, I don't think that net result isn't happening, but I have to believe that maybe you're even right about CZ. I guess all I'm calling out is that there's a mechanism now that we haven't had before that could be used for good, even though it might now be in Erdogan's hands or whatever the guy's name who was running Turkey for years or whatever it was. Maybe you're right. I'm just going to choose to believe that there's an old lady going, if only I had $100, and bing, BUSD is in her account. And she's like, thank you, CZ. Thank you so much. And now she goes, buys water for her kids who are poor and destitute. That's what I'd like to.
I really need to pin down that accent, Grant, and also know what abuela has a Binance account. Please show me.
I was picturing like a gypsy mom, like, oh my goodness, thank God I have my Coinbase account.
That's actually a pretty good point, Jarrett. Have we done investigations into when these Binance accounts were created? Like, if they were all created in the last 24 hours. And suddenly they now got $100 in them. I'm like,
well, actually, okay. Here comes the maxi. All right, here he comes. So prepare yourselves, get your giggles ready. I just think it's an issue that he can just print that much BUSD and just sprinkle it everywhere like Daddy Warbucks. I actually think the future of BUSD is in trouble because Binance, we've talked about it before. I'm just kind of let's just say I took all my money out of Binance as soon as FTX fell. Nothing was left on that thing.
Now you're saying print. Austin, go ahead. Do you think
he can't print BUSD? Like, he literally, CZ has openly admitted that BUSD will slowly die unless there's a change in policy from the SEC. He can't print BUSD. BUSD is minted via US dollars through Paxos, or was. And so there's now Binance itself doesn't actually control BUSD and the minting of BUSD.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. So Paxos did, and it was just 1-to-1 with the money that was put in. So every dollar that comes in, then a BUSD comes out. That's what you're saying?
Yeah. And so any of the BUSD that's being airdropped is from reserves or profits or fees that Binance is collecting.
You know what's funny is we all know that we could go look at the wallet addresses and know where this came from, right? But all of us knowing that are still lazy asses, and we'd rather just have our opinion about it. But you're right, like, there is no max supply, Jarrett, to your point. There is no max supply of BUSD. Yeah. I'm looking at it on CoinMarketCap, but Austin, to your point, we could probably track down reserves and say if CZ can't go over here and dictate supply of BUSD so that it distributes to a bunch of Turkish and Syrian people who are in despair, where did he just wave his magic wand and do it from? It had to come from either Binance's reserves or his own reserves, something to that effect. And we should responsibly track that down, but knowing us, we won't.
The reality is they don't need to be printing, like, you don't need to be printing BUSD, and Tether doesn't need to print USDT. Tether printed a $700 million profit in Q4 from people minting
transaction
Tether.
Fees.
Not
minting
transaction fees. So let's say you've got, I don't know even how many $1 billion of Tether there is, but they put that in treasury bonds they make 4% on that money that's in treasury bonds.
Stop it. I did not know that.
And
Yeah.
so they have no incentive of printing or making themselves a target, because they're literally have an infinite money printer from treasury bonds and people bringing money into USDT.
Jay, what was your question?
They're buying. You said they were buying treasury bonds, like U.S. treasury bonds.
Yeah.
US
They're
treasury
buying-
bonds.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're buying low yield government, financial products, and basically they have just so much money coming in that, as Austin's saying, it's why would they screw it up? Why would they screw up this gravy train? They're gonna get $2 billion in USDT. They put that in away at 4%. That's a lot of pennies.
So I can go mint USDT?
You technically could, but it's like usually they probably deal with select clients. Binance, there's most of the exchanges, and a few other people can go to Tether, give them $10 million, mint me 10 million USD Tether.
Interesting.
And then Tether goes farms that $10 million that you just gave them.
Yeah.
And they make money off of that. They don't even need to charge you for minting the Tether. You just need to give them the 10 million and they're making money. No.
Oh yeah.
No
oh
problem.
yeah. I mean, at volume, who cares? And so what I'm seeing though is Tether was under a lot of scrutiny not that long ago for not being transparent in its bookkeeping. But I see two audits here. On CoinMarketCap.
Who did the
What'd
audit?
You s-
Who did the audit? That's the
CZ's
question.
buddy. CZ's buddy in Turkey did. That's for sure.
Same people who audited FTX. Is that what was happening?
Jay is like Steve Carell's character in The Big Short. He is Mark Baum. He just assumes everything is wrong with the entire system.
That's too
actually
funny.
to get us away from stablecoins, and I think we've talked about Syria and Turkey, and I think we've made some pretty good points. I want to go right into ordinals because we only have about 18 minutes left, and this is massive. This is huge.
Why is this massive? Tell me why first, because I'm like meh, but Austin has a view. Why do you think this is massive?
I find this to be massive because what it's done is it's given utility to Bitcoin outside of just the best savings account you've ever had. It's given utility to Bitcoin outside of just being the most desired, scarce digital asset on the planet, other than maybe, I don't know, you could say CryptoPunks or Bored Apes or whatever you want to say. It's taken all the Satoshis and made them unique enough that people are just going to kind of hound after them. And in getting ready for this show, I had been one of the guys I work with, he already owns one, and we were just talking about how this whole thing works. And so I think it's going to shift the way people think about digital assets. I think I don't even know what that means, Victor, but I want to know. I think it's huge for a Bitcoin maxi because I think that this is just another thing that adds into how the price appreciates as people start to use Bitcoin to transact to essentially get NFTs. I think the other really cool thing too with Ordinals, from what I've read and from what I understand, is that there's not collections. So you only have one-offs. Now you could use a bunch and create a collection, but you can't create a collection like you could on Ethereum, for example. And the thing I like most about this is that the creators have to mint. You don't just put out 10,000 and then people mint. The creator has to mint to literally put it out there in the world, to literally, line up to put the inscription. And I just think that is super cool because what it's going to do, it's going to cut down with people just jumping on and being like, oh, here's 10,000 of my PFPs. It's going to keep it to real artists. And I think this is actually, Victor, if you're hearing me, I think that this is actually one of the places where art is really going to thrive. I think some of the most valuable digital art is not going to live on Ethereum. It's going to live on this new kind of ordinal inscription setup that we have right now.
You literally just said, I think the most valuable art will not live on Ethereum. It will live as ordinals on BTC.
Yeah.
Is that because maybe the US price starts out whatever it is, which is like silly compared to the value of Bored Apes. But because Bitcoin's going to go in your mind to $1 million, or the value of a Satoshi skyrockets, or
it's not even so much about the price of Bitcoin or Ethereum. It's just looking at how currently, as we sit here right now on, happy Valentine's Day, guys, February 14th, 2023. Right now, to make one of these NFTs, basically have an inscription on a Satoshi, get that thing together, you can't just go into OpenSea, upload a JPEG and do it. There's a huge barrier to entry to do it. And you have to burn, not burn, but you have to invest BTC. And I just think people think, just like Raoul Paul said the other day, Ethereum is the money of the internet. Ethereum just feels more fluid. It's like, oh yeah, whatever. I spent 3 ETH on this thing. No one's like, oh, I spent 3 ETH, like $4,500, dollars in Bitcoin on it. I just think right now it's a lot more unique, and it's the barriers to entry are gonna drive price. And I just think big artists should consider putting their collections on there. And I think Ethereum's going to turn a lot into more like ephemeral things like memberships. And that's what's going to be used for, like, Starbucks' Odyssey collection, which is, their rewards program.
Interesting.
It just seems a lot more ironclad. Not to mention that, like, if you think about the one thing that's going to survive in crypto, it's Bitcoin. That's the one thing the U.S. government cannot wrap their head around figuring it out. And they've already said it's a commodity. Everything else is a security. So, like, a long term, that's where I think.
CFTC has come out and said that Ethereum, Litecoin, and I think Bitcoin Cash got on the list of commodities, according to the CFTC.
Ethereum.
I haven't heard that, but that's super cool because
we reported on our show
more commodities in the space, but
2 to 3 weeks ago. Yeah, 2 to 3 weeks ago on our show. It's part of the FTX case. If you go into the notes on some of the files that are going on with FTX, they ruled, or they suggested that those are commodities and not.
Interesting.
I think even USDT, I think Tether was also included on that list. So there was a bunch of other cryptos that were included on the list of commodities. So it's not just Bitcoin anymore.
Is Tristan saying here that Rihanna has already moved music to BTC NFTs?
I've never heard of that.
She's asking if Rihanna. Wait, do you think other music videos are the same on Ordinals similar to? Yeah. Oh, I don't know about Rihanna already having stuff on Ordinals. I didn't know any of that.
I mean, Ordinals are fresh. And Victor is saying here, Ethereum inscriptions are always immutable. So I guess, not to be a hater on this at all, I guess I just don't see how this is more impressive than what we've been doing with NFTs. In fact, if anything, like you said, you can't do collections that we know of yet. Maybe on like extended networks, you can that work off of Bitcoin, but like it just seems more limited. And are you saying because it's more limited, like you're not doing collections, you're all doing one of ones? So for that reason,
I think that reason, and I think the other reason, like there's a couple reasons. I think the fact that these, like the Bitcoin NFTs, and once again, this is just like what I've read and what I'm picking up from other people in the space. Like Giancarlo Buys Tokens is probably a leader in NFTs and like what's going on. And I was listening to him earlier, and he's like, look, the Bitcoin NFTs are actually on chain, right? Like the actual image lives on chain. A lot of the Ethereum NFTs, we know where they live. They're not actually on chain.
That is
a huge deal when you get into like a one-of-one art piece.
Correct.
And then once again, I go back to this. The fact that the creator is the one that has to pay the minting fee just to get it out there for sale is absolutely massive. Because we know we can all go onto OpenSea, take a cool picture, make a 10,000 collection, and then just sell them. And that will seem fluffy compared to this one-of-one, or, you could make the same one, a bunch of one-of-ones. But the fact that they are tied to the actual number of Bitcoin to the actual Satoshi is so freaking cool.
Yo,
The
I
other
have to
amazing
tell
thing.
Victor.
Go ahead.
Go for it. Go for it.
Also the amazing thing is they're not tied to a smart contract that someone can change, someone can create or modify. And so
Boom.
ordinals are protected by the fact that Bitcoin, no one can change Bitcoin other than the existing scheduled rollouts of upgrades by Satoshi Nakamoto.
That's
And
interesting.
And he thought
There-
of NFTs 13 years ago. Think about that.
There-
NFTs are 13 years old.
Yeah. Okay. So this is huge. And Austin, thank you for clarifying some of this stuff. But yeah, they're static. They just live and they exist on chain, and that's it. We're used to thinking about NFTs as something with a smart contract, and then we're going to update metadata. So they're going to change, and we can change clothing and all this fashion and all this stuff. We have a bunch of comments too that I will get to in a second. But I think that this is like the true NFT. You're going to put an image. It's going to be just tied to a Satoshi, one Satoshi. So the thing I read the other day was, it just builds on what Austin says. It's like, okay, we have 21 million Bitcoin, right? And because you're going to do every single Satoshi, and every one Bitcoin has 100 million Satoshis, we now have 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis where you can basically store something. So I think this is the way governments are going to like move forward when they want to store like a new constitution. They're going to just inscribe it onto one Satoshi, and it's there on chain forever. I just think that's crazy. You basically have 2.1 quadrillion cubbies where you can go store shit now in cyberspace. And so I think
Let me
that's
call
cool.
out a few comments.
Yeah,
real
we have a
quick,
bunch of comments.
because
Please
these
go.
guys are rounding out these thoughts. Real quick, I wanted to go all the way back to something Victor said. I didn't realize this. Only CryptoPunks was actually on the ETH chain. Everything else was secondhand storage. That's interesting. So, like, for those who don't know and you're just piping in or watching this later, on most Ethereum NFTs, they're stored in something like Amazon AWS, and what's on chain is just a
Google Drive.
URL. What'd you say?
Google Drives.
Or Google Drive, yes, any of that. And then Victor also drops the link, so go back to that. Now, Brian raises a question that I want addressed. This is great, but because of the size of our blocks, each image has to be less than 4 megabytes. Because a block on the blockchain is 4 megabytes. We're talking about inscribing a Satoshi. How many Satoshis are in a single block? Like, these are very low res images, right?
You could put it across multiple. Like you could ascribe a single image to multiple Satoshis, right? Just sort of, I forget
That's
what the
kind
word
of what
is
I'm
now.
like binary. I mean, like binary, you start doing that, but now you start eating up in a quadrillion Satoshis. Sounds like a lot, but in our data hungry world, my fear, I starting to hear you guys on like the purity of this on-chain piece of data. I'm hearing that now, and then other limitations are hitting me. Like a quadrillion sounds like a lot, but in our data hungry world, that gets eaten up pretty quickly, relatively speaking, or even like not fast enough. How fast is the blockchain? Is the BTC blockchain? And what about secondary blockchains that come along and go, hey, listen, look at the immutability of BTC and ordinals. We got to replicate something with a higher matrix.
Isn't it going to be like Moore's law though? Like with the chipsets, like every so often we double the amount of capacity that we can get out of our chips.
Not with BTC.
I mean, we
BTC
just figured out how to go from 21 million to
2.1 quadrillion.
Like, there's got to be another way to figure this out later down the road. It took us what? How old is Bitcoin? It took us 13 years to figure it out.
13 years.
Yeah, 15 years from now, we'll figure out how to, quadruple it again.
Interesting. I mean, yes, like you could say Moore's law, but we didn't invent Satoshis. That was pre-programmed, right? Like that, so we talk often about 21 million Bitcoin, but the amount of Satoshis have been there the whole time. And that's just a smaller unit. You're slicing up a finite pie. What Jarrett always says is a feature of Bitcoin. If data becomes the purpose of Bitcoin, like this, not currency, but data, now you're stuck. When you have a data proposition, you need infinite data. if you have currency or commodity, you need limited, right? And so there's kind of, it feels like, I'm totally speculating, but it feels like there's cross purposes with something here. But you're right. I mean, Moore's law is going to come in here somewhere, right? Like, because we're humans and we innovate, it's got to show up some way.
I mean, it's already shown up for Bitcoin, right? We've created the Lightning Network. That's innovating on top of the layer. Like that's figuring out a faster way and a cheaper way to move this stuff around the world. So a country like El Salvador can actually use it to buy tomatoes. You know, you don't want to pay more in a network fee than you do in what you're trying to buy. That will never work. I'm not going to go to the movies for $20 if for me to buy my movie tickets, it's $50. I think we should read this quote. Brian has written quite the thing here. It looks like Assange wrote this, and maybe you're getting this off Twitter, but this is kind of cool. It says, Bitcoin is an extremely important innovation, but not in the way most people think. Bitcoin's real innovation is a globally verifiable proof of publishing at a certain time. The blockchain nails down history, breaking Orwell's dictum of he who controls the present controls the past, and he who controls the past controls the future. Very philosophical. It almost sounds like we need to all mic drop and just the screen goes black.
and we just check out. I just can't imagine there's enough ordinals to write data on. But you're right about the Lightning Network, and I have to be honest, I don't totally understand how the Lightning Network works in reference to Bitcoin's limited setup, and I would love to know that. And that was a quote from Assange. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, Jarrett, let me ask you this question. Austin, jump in as well. Now that Bitcoin has NFTs, in my mind, that makes it not equal but equivalent with Ethereum. Does that mean that we start seeing sort of a Bitcoin Ethereum showdown in the same way that we had like a Apple Microsoft showdown in like early 2000s, 1990s? Is that what we're heading towards? That there's only one way to go, and you're either going to be in the Bitcoin camp like Jarrett is, or you're going to be in the Ethereum camp like some other folks?
Austin, why don't you take this? Yeah,
I don't think so, because Ethereum has smart contracts and has like dApps and decentralized applications, which Bitcoin doesn't have. Like you can't really do, like we mentioned the Starbucks Odyssey membership rewards card. Bitcoin can't do that. Ethereum can. And so Ethereum and Bitcoin will continue to coexist there. But sure, Bitcoin now is starting to develop some more use cases outside of just being a store of value or a currency. It now has other things to be an immutable for fine art or digital art, like Victor just mentioned. And so I don't think there's a big showdown. I think they're kind of going to coexist.
Yeah, I totally agree with Austin. I think they're apples and oranges, and they both have a place in the supermarket. They both provide different value. And one of the things that I've been looking at since it came out, and I bought it way too high, Lord knows, is ICP. ICP has long been rumored to be working to create smart contracts with Bitcoin. Somebody will figure out a way to tie in Bitcoin and smart contracts. That will happen, because I think when you're starting to use Bitcoin in a Maxi's theory, right, when we get to hybridization between basically Bitcoin and then probably like the US dollar, if those are the two things that survive, then when I'm buying a home, I'm not going to be using Ethereum. I'll probably be using Bitcoin maybe. And that may need to be smart contracted between the two wallet addresses. So I do think that there's room for both to play. And then even in that world, Jay, where you have Bitcoin with like a very maybe simple smart contract, if ICP can figure it out, Ethereum is just going to continue to grow and have different features that will keep them separate, where I don't actually think that they need to be like, Godzilla and King Kong. Like they don't need to have that showdown. I think that they both can live within the ecosystem and provide different value and provide different solution sets to different problem sets. Now, I know other Bitcoin maxis would say everything I've just said is wrong and that Ethereum is an SHIT coin, but I don't believe that. I think Ethereum has a lot of value and can add, tremendous opportunity for people moving forward.
I think there's a marketing issue here. I think people are just now starting to accept the allegories that we use around describing these to new onboarders. And that is BTC is crypto gold, Ethereum is software or oil or however we've described these things before. And as soon as we start talking about this, I think we could talk about it with nuance. And I think Brian mentioned probably where this makes the most sense is proof of publishing, because you can create a dApp that references the Bitcoin blockchain for proof of publishing and attribution. But hey, Ethereum already does that. And I think that if we were to have tying this back to the banker conversation, we need a pure liquid currency that is trusted by the public. And if we start confusing the messaging to developers and to nuance, yes, this is interesting and I think it would be very cool, but like I still haven't heard anything that's different than what Ethereum already does. So why not still live? If I were talking to a layperson, I would still reference Bitcoin as crypto, this gold savings account in crypto that has a future growth value myself. There might be other factors now that definitely should be considered. But for me, I don't think I'd muddy the water because we're just now starting to build trust outside of our little degen circles, right? You know? Yeah, man. Victor, biggest holder of ETH is China. Is this true?
I
I've never
have any
heard
way
that.
to verify it.
I've never heard that. I assume Victor is in China saying that, so he has to. He's in an internet cafe. He's like,
he's holding Chinese yuan and trying to drive the market. He's a market
he's got the digital yuan all up in his wallet.
Yeah.
Why don't we do some shout outs, because we've gone over time. Somehow the hour got away from us.
Yeah. Go for it.
I'll start. I want to give a shout out to Austin for hopping on.
Yeah.
Coming on the show, joining us. I'll give a shout out to his YouTube, so he's not shilling it. It's Decentralized News. Definitely go find it. Check it out. Yeah. It is, like I said, I watched the episode he put out, I think this morning. And my God, if you just watch that, you are baptized in everything that is going on. Yeah. So Austin, thank you for joining us today. And also to Jay. Jay, good to have you back. I know you've been busy with work.
Yeah, good to see you, man.
I just picture Jay at work with like a wheelbarrow with dollars. And that's what he's doing, because he's just, pushing them around. So anyways, good to have you guys back.
I'll go real quick. Shout out to Brian Naughton. And I want to shout to Victor, because I always shout to Victor because I love his energy and I love his insight. But Brian, particularly today, brought references, which I love when we get good references. So if you're listening to this show, or if you watch the replay, please go through the comments, specifically on LinkedIn. Brian Naughton dropped a lot of really good article links that reference a lot of the stuff we talked about. So massive love to Brian's participation today. Austin, I'll pass it to you, then we'll let Jay go, and then we'll wrap.
Well, I want to give a shout out to you guys for inviting me to be on the show. I had a great time and some great laughs, and I got a shout out to everyone. I'll shout out to my co-host, Peter DeVries. He's a great guy. Does a lot of research for our show so that it can be what it is. So
very cool.
Thank you to Peter.
Very cool. Jay, welcome back. Give us a shout out, bro.
For sure. I think I'll end it by saying shout out to everyone who donated to Turkey and Syria and donated their crypto. You know, bud. Even though it might be a scam in the end, we appreciate you trying to legitimize the industry first.
Yeah. Actually, it's the heart that matters. Go ahead, Jarrett.
Actually, yeah, I got one last thing. Mercy Corps Ventures has put out applications are open. They have something called the C for G, which is Crypto for Good Fund, and they are looking for people that have Web3 projects in emerging markets. So basically not North America and Europe, from what I understand by that. So we're looking at Latin America, Asia, and Africa. And so if you have a Web3 project that you think is cool, go ahead and find me on LinkedIn at Jarrett Carpenter. You can find me at More Than Blockchain, and I'll send you over that information. You can also just search for it by Mercy Corps Ventures, C for G, or Crypto for Good, and it should come up. But very cool. There's 10 different fundings there, each at about $100,000 max. So they have $1 million total. And that's just really great, because if you are in an emerging market, $100,000 can go a long way to get your project off the ground and past the incubation phase. So that's,
Big.
I just wanted to say that on camera. Yeah.
That's a big alpha, by the way. So if you're paying attention and you know someone in an emerging market who could use funding, that's huge alpha. Thanks, Jarrett, and thanks for your participation as crypto philanthropy dude at Mercy Corps. Where can people find us, Jarrett? Let's out.
Wow. Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Not Crypto Bros. And check out all of our shows. We got More Than Blockchain, Decentralized News, Grant Sparks, Podmaster J on Twitter. Find us. We're here every Tuesday at 3:30 Eastern Time. We'll see you next Tuesday.